Hello and welcome to another episode of OCDTV. I am your host, Steve Danger Awesome, and tonight, to honor the memory of Leonard Nimoy, we're going to be counting down from worst to best the Star Trek films. And I assure you that this topic would have been more relevant had the disastrous winter of 2015 not ruined all of our chances of filming another episode between January and now. So for that I apologize, even though you don't care. With me tonight, as always, a man who did not actually see the new Abrams Star Trek movie until tonight because he's one of those people, Brian Connors. And also with me tonight, for the ladies, a man who was also considered to take over hosting duties on The Daily Show, but was rejected because his jokes were actually funny. Joe, the Rooster, Ron Roos. That's it? No,
I got nothing.
To that? No, you're supposed to do something racist. That's how you get a job on The Daily Show.
Aren't black people black?
See, that's almost too far for us. I feel like we're going to get comments now. You ruined it for everyone.
I'm sorry, Jordy.
You've made Jordy. Yeah, you beat me to the Jordy.
Uhura? Not sorry.
No. Well.
Don't you mean we're going to get comment?
A comment. No. I've got some guys now in a D&D thread that occasionally comment and criticize literally every list we produce.
Damn it, popularity ruining.
Well, you know, I keep telling you guys, you know, if you want to participate, I send you the links. I never get lists. Although, I think this list actually does reflect what the general feeling is. Maybe not everybody's particular case, but at least the top choice and the bottom choice and the middle stuff, I think, kind of, well, I'll get to that. And I'm rambling. I should stop doing that.
If it were that easy, you would have shut up years ago.
I guess. All right, so number 12 on the list, and this is going to come to nobody's surprise, is Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Gasp.
Yeah, and we touched on this in our very first episode ever, where I believe it was you, Joe, that said it was Shatner's idea was Kirk versus God, Kirk wins.
Flawless victory.
Yeah, which I got to be honest, I can't see how that premise went so horribly awry.
They let Kirk direct it.
Yeah.
Well, he was upset because Nimoy was running the show for 2 films.
Like, if I directed a movie about me, it would be objectively terrible to everybody but me.
I would watch
Isn't that how it usually is?
Yeah, you'd watch it. You'd probably hate it.
I'm not really sure. I mean, do we have this little to say about Star Trek V and its horribleness, or?
I haven't seen any of these movies in like 6 years. I got nothing.
Is there really anything at all to say about it? We all know the premise was stupid.
Well, I mean, it's one of those movies that, you know, on the barometer of movie shittiness, it's right between Highlander 2 and Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin was not as bad as you seem to think.
Yes, it was. We'll talk another day. We'll do Batman on a different day.
Oh, look who's bucket of gasolining it now.
They're not going to understand that. They weren't here before the show started.
I don't care. I'm just sitting here talking with friends.
I swear I will edit all of your jokes out. I swear.
No, you won't.
No, I can't stay mad at
Well, okay, I mean, that's in movie terms, but in Trek terms, are we talking like worse than Spock's brain or worse than Threshold?
Well, yeah, but you're getting into the TV series, and like there's always going to be, you know, objectively good and bad TV episodes, depending on. I mean, but like Threshold is terrible, but it's also hilarious.
It was
and there were bits and pieces of Final Frontier that were good. Like it was the first outing of the Enterprise A, which is a fan favorite ship.
Right. And I think, well, I mean, there were some good moments in terms of, I mean, Kirk has a soliloquy in there about needing his pain. You know, that worked. But like, you know, Spock having a brother that we'd never heard of before.
To
I
be
mean,
fair,
it's just kind of a Mary
when
Sue.
would we have heard of his brother? He didn't speak to his father until halfway
No,
through the
I
original
understand
series.
that, but it's like nobody mentioned this guy in 30 years. It's just
No, I know.
Deus Ex Fratrina? Fratrinae? I'm not going to coin that.
Spock's evil brother had mind control powers and took over the ship to fly to the center of the galaxy to meet God and have Kirk beat him up. What? It's totally logical.
I'm still a little upset that Kirk didn't punch God.
Fascinating.
That was my only.
I'm a little upset they didn't cast Sean Connery as Cybok.
Did they want to?
The Planet of God, Shaka Ray, was a reference to how they almost cast him because it's a corruption of Sean Connery.
Oh, I see. I'm assuming this is another movie he turned down because he didn't understand it.
Sean Connery only picks films of the highest caliber.
Well, it's just funny that he turned down 2 big roles and then because he didn't understand them, and then he took League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, expecting that to take off like the Lord of the Rings did. Oh, boy.
Star Trek V, Sean Connery's an idiot.
Yeah, it makes more and more sense why he was such a misogynist now.
Still the best Bond, which
Absolutely.
actually kind of backs up the misogynist.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would want to. I mean, the original author was advocating for misogyny, essentially. I mean, Fleming was a terrible person. Objectively terrible. Anyway.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on. Now that we've gotten completely carried away. Number 11, little surprised this is so low, but, well, okay, not as low on my list, but I think, yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. Number 11 is Nemesis, which is universally, I think, reviled by most of the Next Generation fan base. But
I'd say all. It did kill the movies.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't, to me, it was just dull. Like, I don't hate it.
It wasn't so much dull as uncreative. Hey, let's pick a third member of the Enterprise crew to give an evil clone to. And for the third time, we're not picking evil Troy.
I think what they were attempting to do with Nemesis was something similar to what they did with Undiscovered Country, which was to have the Enterprise crew make peace with the Romulans. It was sort of the swan song of the original crew was making peace with the Klingons.
Right.
So why not replicate that? But unfortunately, they didn't give a cool Romulan bad guy, or give us a cool Romulan bad guy. It was just Picard's clone, who wasn't very interesting.
Yeah,
From a-
Picard's clone, we had Data got another clone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Troy got mind raped.
Again.
Borderline?
What?
Oh, yeah.
No, there was like the plot of like 12 episodes.
Yeah.
All some of the worst ones.
Yeah, like if you're going to create a movie out of the worst, out of episodes that you've already done, don't pick the worst ones. Do like Best of Both Worlds meets The Inner Light or something.
Yeah, don't. They might as well have had Troy's mom show up. That's how you know not to watch an episode of The Next Generation if Troy's mom shows up. You can go do something else.
That was kind of nepotism.
You think so?
Possibly.
No one ever wondered why the computer sounded like Troy's mom.
Still does. I don't know. Are they still using her voice for the Abrams films? I didn't notice.
They did in the first one. I don't know if they did in the second.
She's
I don't
gotta
even remember them doing
She's
the
got to
first
have one foot in the grave at this point.
She's gone. She died a few years
Oh,
ago.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, now we're all sad.
Her last role was doing the voice for the computers for the Abrams movie.
It's fitting, I guess. But she played a terrible character on Next Generation, is all I'm saying. And I think it's a bit awkward. I understand trying to like address those issues, through the lens of science fiction, but I think it made all of us feel terrible when we were watching it as teenagers.
Yeah.
Like it was a little bit much. I don't know. So working it into the movie, I think you're sort of pulling on plots from episodes nobody liked. You creating a villain that nobody liked. And you're sort of rushing to the finish line to settle this conflict.
They could have at least made him likable by having Patrick Stewart play evil Patrick Stewart.
Right.
Instead of bringing in the man who would later reach international fame as the man who broke the Batman.
Well, I don't know that Tom Hardy got famous for that specifically. But
That was the joke.
Oh, I see.
And now I feel bad.
I don't know. Okay. Well, we're sucking at this right now, so I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Number 10, Insurrection. A film that is pretty much a mediocre two-parter episode of Next Generation, right?
They could have crammed that into one part. Actually, they did cram that into one part. They did that a lot, actually.
Did they?
They were really scraping the bottom of the barrel by the end of the Next Gen movies, huh? It's no wonder they killed the franchise.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean...
No, there was an episode where Worf's adoptive brother was spending time with these Indian colonists on some planet that was going to be destroyed. So Worf's adoptive brother, and I'd like to say adoptive brother because he was human, his adoptive brother secretly transported them to the holodeck on the Enterprise so they could be relocated somewhere else. What does that sound like? The exact plot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except without the magic time slowing down powers that Picard learned.
You know what's funny is a lot of people who answered our poll or just commented on it also pointed out that they couldn't actually remember which one was which between Nemesis and Insurrection. Like,
Well-
they're like interchangeably bad, I guess.
Well, the entire concept with Insurrection was a bit of a stretch anyway.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there.
Yeah. Like alien facelifts.
Yeah, and then you had that. They had, magic healing space dust, and they were going to transport them onto a holodeck after knocking them unconscious. It just all seems like a stretch, sort of.
Yes.
Let's have Starfleet secretly move an indigenous people because
And-
they want the Fountain of Youth.
and-
that seems like the thing Starfleet would do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the warp core was ejected again.
They must carry around like 30
That's
spares.
what I'm saying. Like, they're the worst ships. Yeah, but you're right. It was completely inconsistent with Starfleet's mission, and there was some dialogue in there about maybe it was that one admiral guy's pet project, but
I've heard people claim that it was a Project Section 31 was doing the secret section of Starfleet.
spare me your retroactive continuity.
I'm sorry, I thought we were doing a Star Trek show.
Let's be honest, when it comes right down to it, it's all about the alien facelifts, which, for those of you who follow TV tropes, that is what we would call NARM.
I don't understand.
It's supposed to be
NARM is. I don't
dramatic,
know why
it's
it's
just
NARM.
bad.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Good performance on the part of the. I forget the actor's name now, though. Who was the villain? Like, he was 10 times more interesting than Shinzon. I mean, that was.
Some guy.
And yet you don't remember who he is.
I don't know. I'm sure he was. I'm sure they got somebody like that was semi-recognizable because it was a villain in the movie.
Slapped 30 layers of makeup on him for those scenes where they peeled off 2 of those layers.
Like they got they got Generations had
Malcolm
McDowell, thank you, who they needed a villain for a sci-fi movie. You get Malcolm McDowell, so there's that. But I don't know. Yeah, these movies are essentially interchangeable,
Right.
and pretty forgettable. Not like they don't create the kind of rage or division amongst the fans. Like, I defended both of these movies when they came out, but
If there were nothing else on TV and those movies were on,
Yeah.
I would sit down and watch them. But I never break out my DVDs of them that I only have.
exactly, and I don't like. I defended them like, no, they're not that terrible, but they're just they don't.
Kind of like me and Batman.
They were at
and
the
Robin.
bottom of my list. Yeah, but you're objectively wrong on that. Stop defending Batman and Robin, or we will not be able to be friends anymore.
It's big budget Adam West and Burt Ward.
No, it's not. It's way weirder than that.
Agree to disagree about how
it's
wrong you are.
No, you're super wrong. If we got a big budget Adam West and Burt Ward, it was the Batman movie starring Adam West and Burt Ward.
Yeah,
and it was great.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
If that movie were made in the 90s, it would have been Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
They were both called Batman and Robin.
No, but they would have gotten a good actor to play Mr. Freeze.
Touche.
Never mind. Star Trek, the motion picture, or as one commenter put it, the motionless picture. I think we're all. I mean, that sums it up.
Yeah.
I mean, they really spent a lot of time in pre-production. Originally, it was going to be a new series. Then they switched to a movie. they compressed what they were going to do with the series down into a film.
Well, the whole plot of it was a rehash of a rehash. I mean, the original was the episode The Changeling with Nomad.
Right.
And then for Phase 2, they rewrote it as In Thy Image. And then when Phase 2 didn't go forward, they turned In Thy Image into the motion picture.
Right. And as I understand it, Roddenberry kind of wanted to have a similar ending to it that Final Frontier had, but at the time in the 70s, they couldn't be as challenging to the concepts of God.
Yeah.
As they were, not that long. Was it 10 years? 8, so yeah, around there.
And that whole thing, if you know the story behind it, the whole production was a nightmare. Virtually every word of dialogue in there is ADR because the studio equipment was so noisy that they couldn't record anything. And they hated the uniforms.
Can we talk about how disco those uniforms were? I don't know what they were thinking. I understand, when you compare them to the original series uniforms, they're not that different, but at the same time, they're just different enough to be terrible. These men are too old to be wearing those kinds of clothing. Just weird.
The real upside of it was that the whole movie was just wall-to-wall scenery porn. If you like special effects, if you like scenery porn.
Yeah, in that sort of late 70s way where they could do some cool laser light effect stuff that doesn't really look like a ship traveling through warp speed, but it'll look cool on the screen.
Unfortunately, that's all they had. You may as well just have Michael Bay make a movie called Boom that's entirely made up of explosions.
I'd watch that.
Hasn't he?
I
believe that. There's still
I think they call that every movie he's ever made ever.
No, there's still traces of plot in some of his movies.
Look, when he gets to 6 Transformers movies, we'll rank those.
You'll rank those.
I'm sorry that I'm just a better nerd than you are.
Yeah, better.
Yeah. You don't like Transformers, you don't like Star Wars, you think Batman and Robin is a good movie. What's wrong with you?
No, I don't think it's a good movie. I just think it's not as bad as everybody says. Still the worst of that quadrilogy.
Quadrilogy?
I don't know what tetralogy.
That sounds way better.
I'm going to call it tetralogy.
That's probably not it, but I'm going to.
It's still the worst of those 4 movies.
Absolutely.
But it's not as bad as everybody thinks.
No, that's probably. Well, yeah, but it was just such a disappointment. Batman Forever was actually halfway decent.
I think Batman and Robin is closer to the 60s show than
I think
Batman Returns is to any Batman.
We're doing it again.
It's called a running gag.
It's called going back. No, or does everything just go back to Batman?
Pretty much, yeah.
So I might have guessed that Kevin Bacon is to be the next Bruce Wayne then.
That would be awesome. Oh my God. Somebody write a letter.
The sad part is this is going to have to be
he's going to be
out.
cheaper than Ben Affleck.
True.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't get Matt Damon as Robin.
Moving on.
Number 8, Generations.
This is the first time I've actively hated our viewing audience. All of you. Every one of you. Camera on me.
Hold on. Nope. Give him his camera.
Every one of you.
Are you finished?
Yeah, I guess.
This is another one of those movies that I think just sort of fits into that mediocre 2-parter episode, but I personally felt it got better with repeated viewings. I didn't like it at the time because I was just kind of that was underwhelming, especially given the trailer sold it as this big epic clash between, the crews and some Klingons or such, but.
Yeah, it wasn't so much Generations as it was Star Trek The Next Generation plus a tiny bit of Kirk.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like they took an episode they had already had written that Shatner wasn't available for at some point.
You mean the Scotty episode?
Well, no.
This seems to be a running theme with the movies. They're all bad rehashes of earlier episodes.
They did Spock. They did Scotty. You know, eventually, like I think if they'd done 8 seasons, they would have brought in Kirk, and that would have been.
McCoy was in the pilot.
You know, and that would have been one of our favorite episodes ever. But to just have, you know, Picard and Kirk have a fist fight, you know, with everybody's favorite sci-fi villain actor. I mean, they even reused the bird of prey explosion from Star Trek VI. That's how uninterested they were in making huge set-piece ships to have battles with.
They added 2 extra stations that nobody could really understand to the bridge.
The Enterprise D was so advanced that it was destroyed by a century-old bird of prey. That was...
See, in my headcanon, the Galaxy class was a colossal failure for Starfleet.
That is the only way it makes any sense. You have to accept that it was a totally flawed design from the very beginning.
The Galaxy class was an absolute disaster. I mean, they lost. I mean, in the first, just on screen alone, they lost 2 in like the first 2 years of the program. Which would explain why they were so quick to...
The only Galaxy class wasn't destroyed until the Odyssey on DS9. And that was only to show the audience that if Picard and co. had gone up against the Dominion, they would have lost. There were Galaxy classes that lost their crew, but the ships themselves were intact. They weren't destroyed on screen in Next Generation, though.
Are you guys going to have a fight?
I didn't bring any weapons.
Okay. I mean,
Well, then I guess I win.
All right. I got a little scared there. Well, with you laying the smacketh down over here. By the way, you were totally wrong. That episode we did about Star Trek, and we had that argument about the Ferengi.
Okay.
You were definitely wrong.
I'm pretty sure I wasn't. I don't know what we're talking about.
It's fine. I don't want to get into it.
All I can really say is
I have a video prepared.
Can't talk about Batman. Can't talk about Star Trek.
if the Galaxy class was so great, they had absolutely no need whatsoever for the Sovereign class. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the Galaxy class were for exploring. The Sovereign class was for destroying the crap out of things.
Yeah, the whole point behind the Sovereign class was it was a dedicated warship to fight the Borg.
True.
You know, but that's all meta material. They just wanted to do something cool for the new movies that was a little bit more detailed. And
Like I said, headcanon.
I've never been a fan of the Galaxy class. I love the Next Generation. Great show, great cast, memorable characters. Dumb ship.
It was okay. It wasn't my favorite ship. My favorite ship is far and away the Defiant.
It's everybody. Everybody loves stuff. It's everybody.
It's true. I liked the idea of the Enterprise about how it was just a university town in space,
Right.
bringing the scientists to the discoveries instead of discovering things and having them study them back home. But the execution was awful.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
It's a fat, ugly ship.
It's a fat, ugly ship. It was essentially somebody took a look at the Ford Taurus and said, let's make our ship look like that.
You know what the
This
Next
is-
Generation needs? We take the Constitution class and we get it pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. let's just make everything round and smooth and disproportionately large in the wrong places. It was
Notice how the saucer section is an oval but going the wrong way?
right.
Like you would think it would be long going forward so that it looks kind of aerodynamic and neat, but no, the large part was on the side and then it was stubby going forward. And it was dumb.
Of all the ships that used that configuration, it's the only one where the nacelles don't come up over the top of the saucer section, which makes
Voyager.
it look Yeah, but Voyager, it's got the variable geometry. The point being that it just didn't. There were some design changes that they made there that were just wrong-headed, in my opinion. They just made it look less like a spaceship and more like a piece of abstract art you would, put on a stand in a rich person's house, painted in pastels.
Which actually does accurately reflect the values of the Federation, so. I guess it fit, but it was still ugly.
It was terrible. It fit too closely with early '90s vehicle design. Yeah. And that was essentially my objection, although it was in fact designed in the 80s.
87, I think was the first season?
Yeah, so.
Could have inspired that vehicle design.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not like Star Trek didn't inspire anything else.
Wow. So the most terrible Star Trek ship inspired the most terrible era of car design ever.
Yes, the blob car.
Star Trek, ahead of its time.
God, I hate the 90s. All right. So, number 7, Into Darkness. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who think this should be lower on the list. There's going to be some people who think this should be higher on the list. But I'd like to point out with this and the 2009 Star Trek film that both of them kind of managed to end up being in the middle of the list. And since they're both really divisive, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously the first one scored a little bit higher, but and now Dominic Cumberbatch has become, you know, God's gift to genre acting because reasons.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see the appeal.
All I really have to say about that is, I mean, people will object, of course, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch is white. Of course, Mercado Montalban was Mexican. Then again, Khan was a product of the eugenics wars. He may have been raised in India, but who knows where his genes came from.
I think that the argument there seems to be somebody involved didn't want to have a dark-skinned guy as the bad guy because
That could be.
because
don't use
of a
Khan.
tradition
I mean-
of doing that over the years. And yeah, exactly. Don't use Khan.
Of course, we're also talking about
Or they could have had him be another augment under Khan's command, another one of those 72 life pods. And then, as an Easter egg, while we're panning past all of them, we see a CGI Ricardo Montalban in one of them.
Well, I mean, I do think, I mean, what's interesting about it is they made, I mean, there's a perfectly good reason why Khan would have a completely different personality. I mean, the original one, the Enterprise wasn't ready for him, but in the new one, Section 31 went looking for him.
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, that's all non-canon. You know, all of that is retcon stuff. I mean, people that they decided to characterize him differently in the newer films is just a creative choice. That's all
Right.
it is, and you can justify it any way you want. But
I'm just
Ricardo
saying,
Montalban's performance was so memorable
yeah.
and so iconic. And I think they phoned it in when they decided to pick Khan as a villain. Now, I liked the movie. I liked parts of it. You know, and I liked the chemistry between the crew and everything else. But
It was just really blatant pandering. We want to get Lady Tumblerettes, I believe they're called, into the seats. Let's pick Benedict Cumberbatch.
again, I didn't have a problem with his performance per se.
If he were a
Right.
totally original villain that wasn't Khan, didn't have that history, didn't have what we expected of that role, he would have been great. Sure, whatever.
Well, I think Abrams made them because Abrams doesn't really do anything new. He just wants to mine
Well, I
nostalgia.
think we've established that none of the Star Trek movies do anything new.
No.
So does that basically make him the sci-fi equivalent of Quentin Tarantino then?
No. He's not as obsessed with the N-word.
True.
Well, not on camera.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino's overrated. But, like, I don't really want to come down on Into Darkness as being a terrible movie because I liked it. But I can understand why the fan base is really divided over it, why some people really, really despise it.
It was solidly watchable. It
Yeah.
wasn't great. Really did like the homages to Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
When, spoiler alert, when Kirk was dying, Spock yells, "Khan!" That was
Yeah,
that was
that was
legitimately
funny.
hilarious.
That was funny.
I don't know if it was meant to be like serious and full of gravitas, but it was hilarious.
No, it's J.J. Abrams. He definitely wanted us to laugh when that happened. There was definitely he was tickling the nostalgia bone. I mean, he had a tribble. So I don't know where they're going to go with the next movie since he's not going to be involved, but he's doing Star Wars. I think he's more suited for Star Wars.
At least you can blame the lens flares on the lightsabers.
Because, well, my argument is that J.J. Abrams did for Star Trek what we wanted George Lucas to do with the prequels, which was essentially just to kind of make a fun movie that casually referenced the originals, and he did none of those things. 3 movies and he did none of it. It was like a Millennium Falcon in the background at one point. Like, really? Okay. We'll see, JJ. We'll see. We got what, 8 months? I don't know.
December, right?
Yeah, something like.
So yeah, 8 months.
So we'll do an episode on that.
All right.
We'll do Star Wars before that comes out, and or should we do it after it comes out and we can rank well? Or should we wait 5 years until they're all out?
Yes.
I feel like maybe we could be scheduling this off camera.
Yeah, let's go back to the topic.
Number
Batman and
6.
Robin not as
No. Not happening again. You shut your whore mouth. Number 6, the 2009 reboot of Star Trek by aforementioned director J.J. Abrams.
also should have been higher.
It was pretty high on some lists.
I mean, I thought it was a solid movie. I mean, there were a few. I mean, there were a lot of Easter eggs. Like if you notice at the very end, Chris Pike is wearing one of the motion picture uniforms.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all in there. I mean, Abrams did what he does, and he just piled in stuff that he knew would please people. I mean, when the red shirt comes down and joins Kirk and Sulu for the away mission, I mean, my son was sitting next to me, and he was 8, and he looks at me and goes, "He's not coming back, Dad, is he?"
Yeah, that was actually a little on the nose, but you know.
I mean, that was the whole point. But we all got a good laugh over that, I think was the point. I mean, Kirk's intro, which they used I think kind of spoiled in the trailers, where he's a kid and he's stealing the car.
I think
I mean that was great because I liked that because that just seemed to be very Kirk.
I mean, I think Abrams actually did pay a lot of attention to character development, and I think he did a reasonably good job of extrapolating how the characters would be different in the different time streams.
Right.
I mean,
and then there's the little things he did, like having Chekhov on the ship.
Yeah.
When he should have been, I don't know, the fans figured this out, like 5 at the time.
Yeah, he definitely made Chekhov older.
You don't do it without doing Chekhov.
Yeah.
I mean,
not necessarily true, but
no, you need to get him on.
But even then, there were ways they could have gotten around it, especially since they brought in Leonard Nimoy to write a love letter to. We're not completely throwing away the old continuity.
Yeah, that would be my only complaint with the film was that, I mean, if you're going to do a reboot, just do a reboot. No more time travel, for God's sake.
So you like the time travel?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I mean, if you get... See, this is why I think Abrams had to do it that way. Because if you're doing a reboot, you're going to wind up incurring the wrath of everybody for no good reason. They're going to say, oh, you didn't follow this, you didn't follow the... No. You go back, you change the entire continuity, suddenly you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Well, no, but they did that anyway.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, you know.
But at least there was an in-story reason for it.
I guess. I mean, but if you wanted to do some things, because some of the big complaints was like killing Spock's mom and blowing up Vulcan. It was sort of like...
Spoiler alert, by the way. Also, if some of you haven't seen it until recently...
It's been 6 years, they can shut the hell up.
Yeah, it's...
some people have only seen that movie recently, though.
No, 1 year is enough for spoilers.
Some people have only just recently gotten around to see Star Trek. There must be some people who haven't yet.
Those people.
I know, right?
People.
Bastards.
See, now you're going to have to go back and watch Into Darkness.
I will.
Finally. Yeah, just so you can weigh in on some other topic, like maybe when we're talking about Batman and Robin.
I will say, one of the things I did notice is that J.J. Abrams, I don't want to say it was hard science fiction because there should be no way that whatever that red matter was would be something they could handle directly. But I think J.J. Abrams did try to inject just a little bit of hard SF into it, which Star Trek had never really had before because everything ran on unobtainium.
I don't know, that kind of bugged me actually, because that seemed like it was stretching the premise a little bit beyond dilithium, like especially in a series where people have been trying to retroactively explain how the science works.
Yeah.
You know, to make it, more realistic, even if...
We call those people turbo nerds.
Right. I thought those were guys who really liked Power Rangers Turbo.
Also, a word can have more than one meaning.
I guess, but I like the same guys. I bet they're the same guys.
They're very much not the same guys.
Okay.
I actually thought the part where, towards the end, where they're trying to warp away from the black hole and they just can't quite hit escape velocity. I thought that was actually clever enough that I'm willing to forgive the fact that the black hole that ate the Narada should have been about the size of a pencil point.
Well, no, that's artistic license.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make it that small, but it won't look cool. You know, I'm not going to fault them for that one.
Yeah, it's a little hard to make a ship design that complex just go.
Yeah, no, you get it. I mean, little tiny technical things like that done for visual. I mean, I'm not going to.
No, he just said it was a big thing.
Little tiny detail. So help me if you bring up Batman again. So help me God. It's coming.
Why don't we talk about number 5 now, Steve?
Number 5. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which was the swan song of the original crew. And oddly low on a couple of lists.
You're looking at me as if I remember.
No, it's not yours. No. That's well, you know, this is what, as we mentioned before, was the plot essentially being making peace with the Klingons finally, which seemed like a fitting way, you know, to end that arc, since Star Trek was more about, like, you know, the future is going to be a positive place.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that, you know, we can make peace with bitter enemies. And of course, Next Generation was already running at that point, and they were already talking about how
Well, yeah, I mean,
they had settled things with the Klingons.
The Undiscovered Country, fine movie, but honestly, it's pure backstory. It's part of the Star Trek equivalent of the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was still a fun movie to watch. I mean, watching, you know, Kirk
See, I
and McCoy's exchanges
remember
when they were
like, was
in
that
prison.
the movie where Kirk found out he needed glasses?
No.
No, that's 2.
Was it?
Yeah,
All right.
because he sells them in 4.
That's right.
You know, because that led to the joke of, like, I'll give you $100 for it, and he said, "Is that a lot?" And then everybody laughs because in 1986,
Something like that.
yeah, $100 was kind of a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, not totally, but it would buy you 50 GI Joes. That's how I translate it.
No,
my
that's right.
head.
That's right. I would have bought a lot of Batman action figures.
There weren't a lot of Batman action figures in the 80s.
Yeah.
The 80s was kind of like a Batman void area.
Yeah.
Until '89.
They're like, yeah, 89, the last year of the decade.
Wasn't that the decade the Super Friends came out, or was that the '70s?
That was the 70s. It was repeated a lot in the 80s. I believe so. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But, and I don't, like, Adam West had come back to do a couple of things after that. But he wasn't a prominent character. This was when the comic book was getting, we're doing it again.
Amazing.
Oh, I'm not letting you do this next time. I'm not. It's not going to happen. All right, we're going to do the Avengers, and that's the wrong universe.
Challenge
Just so you
accepted.
know, get your votes in soon. We're doing the Avengers
Challenge
movies
accepted.
in the next episode. I've already decided that. Now I've said it. It's law. I'll be looking forward to your comments. Anything more to say about Batman?
No, we're talking about Star Trek. Back on topic, Steve. Thought you were the moderator.
Yeah, there were some comments about Undiscovered Country that it seemed like, to some people, the characters were written as parodies of themselves. But I think that type of thought process comes about whenever you try to do something a little bit more upbeat or positive.
Yeah.
You know, you've got that one group, you know, that really, really loves The Empire Strikes Back and just thinks everything should have a downer ending. You know, so if you have a really upbeat movie that's, you know, the last hurrah for this crew and this cast,
Right.
you know, for some reason, ending that on a high note and giving everybody something awesome to do upset people in some way? I don't know. I don't really understand.
Star Trek fans will never be happy with what you give them, even if 10 minutes beforehand they told you exactly what they wanted and you gave that to them. They will still be angry that you were so close to what they wanted.
No. Or they would just bitch about the lens flare.
Star Trek fans are idiots.
Yes.
And I say this as a member of a panel dedicated to discussing Star Trek movies and also occasionally Batman.
You're talking to a guy who has a polo shirt with a Star Trek
No, I know. I'm
label? What
Patch.
do they call that? Badge? Patch?
I want to say it's a patch
It's a patch.
with a P, yeah.
Okay. But it's sewn in. I don't.
Embroidery.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about clothes. This is really better than Batman.
No.
We aren't sponsored by Joann's Fabric, but if anyone from Joann's is watching,
We can't. We're not allowed to have sponsors of public access.
Damn it!
We're allowed to take free things in exchange for talking about them, though, right?
I don't know. What free things would we take?
Actually, it's about ethics and public access.
I thought the whole point was that there weren't a lot of ethics. It was just kind of, we were legally bound not to advertise things.
Well, this is much better than all those times I brought up Batman. What's next on the list, Steve?
Next on the list is Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Coming in at number 4.
Once again, all Star Trek fans that watch the show and contributed to this list are objectively, morally, and spiritually wrong.
Number 4 is pretty high. I mean, it's the top 4.
Yeah, it's too high, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you think it should be lower?
I do.
Please explain.
I don't remember it.
Years ago,
I don't think it was a great movie. It was a movie where magic Star Trek technology brings the dead to life. That doesn't.
Well,
I'm sorry.
All
that
right,
does
but
not,
but okay. So years ago, I worked at Suncoast, which some people might remember as a video store, where you purchased movies. You didn't rent them. But
are those the people that made the orange soda?
No. That was Orange Julius. Still around, actually. There's one in the.
It was actually Sun-Kissed. Was the joke I was making?
I don't know.
Sun-Kissed. It's
Right,
a brand of
but-
soda. Go on, Steve.
Well,
what was it
were at
like
the-
working
we
at
were at
Suncoast?
the mall.
No, forget
so,
it.
yeah.
Look, all I'm saying is I got a really good discount, so in the late 90s I went back and bought all the movies, because this was before Netflix. There was a time before Netflix. It was terrible. And I hadn't seen them all in a really long time, and I went back and watched them all, and I realized that like the odd even rule wasn't really as applicable as we've been saying it was all these years. Because one, as much as we poke fun at it, not completely terrible. 3, actually, of the original 6 movies, was probably on the same level as 6.
Yeah,
in terms of like how many people liked it and how much fun it was to watch. So.
Well, I think as general, if you talk about the odd even rule, I think pretty much everyone specifies that 3 was the exception anyway.
Yeah, I guess I just don't remember anybody pointing that out. During the dark times. I think everybody just talked about it as, oh yeah, 3's terrible, and then you actually go back and watch it and you say, well, and if you watch 2, 3, and 4, it's a single narrative that strings together. Which is why 5 was so disjointing, because it didn't really fit into the narrative, whereas 6 did. If you could watch 2, 3, 4, and 6 as a single narrative, because the 6th movie references the events. It's still about the Klingons.
I will say, best scene from 3, Uhura shoving the guy into a closet.
That's pretty good. No, I think.
Or any scene with Christopher Lloyd.
Or now any of Sulu's lines retroactively viewed after he'd come out of the closet.
Well, that's not Star Trek 3 specific, though. That's every Sulu line ever.
Oh, I know.
Like in the original series where he was fencing without a shirt on?
Actually, the second best line was John Larroquette's little Klingon extra character where he says to Kirk, "I thought you were going to kill me." Kirk says, "I lied."
Yeah. I think what was fun about watching that movie too was going back and realizing who all of those actors were, because I had seen it as a kid.
Yeah.
And then later on watching it and realizing, oh, under all this makeup are people who,
Yeah.
I mean, that's Christopher Lloyd, really selling it. I mean, he wasn't as memorable as Ricardo Montalban, but.
Well, that's kind of hard to do. I mean, Ricardo Montalban, you just have to watch out for teeth marks on the
and that's what. I guess what I'm saying is that 2 was a really hard act to follow, and 3, as a result, I think, is a much better movie when viewed on its own, through the lens of nostalgia, or. The same thing with Generations. Like, we hated it for some reason, and then it got better with repeated viewing. Although, in this case, this aligns with my view as opposed to Generations, which was further down the list. It's really the Generations of the original. No, I don't want to say that. It would have, if they had only made 6 movies, it would have been number 4 on that list. It would have been in the bottom 3. But well, some people actually were surprised with our results, wondering why the Abrams films didn't land higher.
Because everybody who cares enough to write a list like this on Facebook probably is 40 years old.
Yeah, they're
Like,
all
how many
around our
younger
age.
people actually, people who didn't grow up with original series Next Generation movies?
I don't know. I mean, like my kid and his friends are only barely connected to it because
Like if you got a bunch of people who weren't Trekkies to rank these movies, the Abrams films would have been higher because they were made to appeal to a wider audience.
Plus, I think the dominant. I think these days with the younger people, it's more Whovians than Trekkies anyway.
Oh my God, I hate everything.
It's all right. Just let it go.
Would you like a
I'm
cold?
trying to shake it off,
Yeah.
but
Would you like a cold towel?
please.
Check it out.
Tough. I don't have any.
Whovian's gonna who?
And now I hate you a little bit.
Horton here's a doctor.
Well, we could talk about Doctor Who. I mean, we could rank the doctors. There's been 12. 12.
So I really
13.
think Arnold Schwarzenegger really chewed up the scenery in Batman Robin as much as any villain from
you
the
said-
60s show did.
He was just bad at it.
Yeah, who on the 60s show was good?
No. I'm
Caesar
saying-
Romero
no,
couldn't even
no,
be bothered
no.
to shave his mustache before
Though-
putting on grease
Yeah,
paint.
but they were hilarious. It was just fun. It would like Schwarzenegger looked like he was having fun, but he was the only one getting in on the joke.
Yeah, but it's Arnold Schwarzenegger making
my
ice
list.
puns for 2 hours. That
know.
was hilarious.
And number 3 is First Contact.
Oh, look at you, jumping us ahead.
I know, right?
Oh, you're trying to be sneaky.
I know.
Proud of you.
I know. I'm trouble.
Look at you.
I once had an 8-year-old tell me that. I don't know what to think of that.
Star Trek 4, The Voyage. No, I'm sorry. What did we say? First Contact?
First Contact.
Right. Oh, that's what I wanted to mention about that. Actually, First Contact and Voyage Home tied for number 2, but Voyage Home was slightly higher on more lists. It's just that a couple of people had it really high. So that's why I had Voyage Home in the number 2 spot. But First Contact, there is a contingent of fans out there that really hates First Contact.
We call him Jamie.
I and my buddy, a couple of other guys. I was unaware they existed until about 2 years ago. First Contact is a good movie.
It's the best Star Trek movie.
most-
It topped my list.
Most of the fans think it's a good movie. If you don't think it's a good movie, you're in a very small minority, and I want you all to shut up.
First Contact really is. I mean, it's not just one of the best Trek movies. It's one of the best space opera movies in general, like in the entire genre.
I've heard people make the complaint that it was too action movie-ish, that it turned Picard into an action hero instead of a thinking man's hero. Because clearly the better option would have been Picard sitting in his ready room for 2 hours reminiscing about his white whale.
We got the movie. We got the movie that wasn't an action movie and was supposed to be really thoughtful. We got that. It was Star Trek the Motion Picture. And it was terrible. So, that's that.
I mean, you had the thinking man's, Picard is Captain Ahab going after his white whale. That's really deep, but he's also shooting lasers at robot zombies. That's awesome.
And Wrath of Khan, everybody loves it, and it's an action movie. And I fail to see how First Contact is any less intellectual
Yeah.
than
I mean, I've asked people and tried to have them explain it to me, but they do it in a way that makes me not want to listen to them say
go on these
anything
rants.
ever again.
Most of the time, they just rant about how Picard had already solved his issues with the Borg in a previous episode of the series, and it was
because that's how post-traumatic stress
it
disorder
just
works.
goes away.
It never comes
You
back.
just magically get cured of it, and it especially goes away when the thing you're the most afraid of attacks your homeworld. And,
Right. Yeah. That's
goes back in time and slaughters your people. We're really just using this as an opportunity to rant about something.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's
It has flaws. It's not a perfect movie, but really, what is?
No.
If the Borg
Well,
had time travel, why did they do it once and
there
never
are little-
again?
there are little-
Why did they wait till they got to Earth at the most heavily defended part before going back in time? There were obviously flaws.
When nerds hate something, they really pick on like the little things. you know, and like if they love something, they ignore the little things. So continuity errors or, you know, inconsistencies in the plot, I mean, you just gotta let that go. I mean, if that's what you're gonna complain about, then forget it. But anyway, number 2, like I said, Voyage Home. I think, I mean, it was the most successful Star Trek movie to date when it came out. And it was like in the top 5 for that year, which I want to say is 84, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
That was one of the first movies that like my sister and I just went to together. We were allowed to go see a movie, like walk to the movie theater. Yeah, they let you do that. When one of you was 8 and one of you was 10.
And it was Star Trek
It was the 80s. We trusted people.
It was Star Trek as comedy, and it really worked because it let the actors get into the characters in a way they probably hadn't since the original series.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, you had Spock with the whole fish out of water thing, and you know, jokes about where we parked and all that. But yeah, it all worked. It was a great movie.
Yeah. You're from outer space. No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in outer space. You know, I mean, it worked.
Spock diving into a pool to mind meld with whales. That was a great scene.
Is it different in tone from the previous 3 movies? Yes, but we forgive it because it's great.
Yeah.
I'm not angry at them for going for a lighter tone. And I can see why some people might not like that because they maybe preferred it more serious. But
Yeah.
those people are wrong and bad and terrible, and I hate them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've learned that it's. I mean, if you look at other shows, I mean, I already mentioned Babylon 5, NCIS, a lot of other shows on TV. You realize you can combine comedy and drama very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
You can also do it badly, though.
you can change from episode to episode.
Yeah.
I think that's acceptable. But anyway, number 1, nobody's surprised here, by a sound margin. Like about 20 points, seriously, nothing even came close, was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I mean, I don't think there's anything more to say other than it's not just a good Star Trek movie, it's just a good movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's an interesting irony in that. Because the story I've heard, after the first movie, Paramount basically kicked Gene Roddenberry upstairs to an advisory role, where the whole point was he could come up with ideas and Paramount could ignore him.
right.
So they brought in Harv Bennett, who was absolutely and completely unfamiliar with Star Trek, and he wound up absolutely nailing it.
Did he go back? Didn't he go back and like watch the whole series?
I don't remember, but I do know he was an outsider. He was not a Trekkie at all.
Right, and in doing so, he created an action-oriented, movie with broad appeal to a mass audience.
Funny about that, huh?
The one Star Trek movie everybody loves has all of the things that everyone complains about in the new movies. Anyway, we've run a little long here, guys. Any final words?
I think Uma Thurman was an underrated Poison Ivy.
I think that.
About Star Trek.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't specify.
I don't know. I'm running out of jokes tonight. I'm sorry.
Everyone who wrote a list for this episode is an idiot, and I hate you.
That's not everyone felt the same way you did. I'm using a weighted average, so things get knocked around a bit. You and Barron are probably going to have a fist fight one of these days. But I would like more lists, people, and maybe it'd reflect popular opinion better. Just saying.
To be fair, some of us didn't make our lists until like 2 days ago.
Well, it's because we kept pestering you.
We,
I'm not really sure why you resisted so much. I mean, it's not like you were doing anything else.
That was 10 seconds of my life I'll never get back.
Oh. I was up to like 1:30 in the morning last night compiling these lists.
Sorry, that must have been hard for you.
Not really. I would have been up anyway. Brian? Khan. Did you guys ever see, now I can't think of the name of it. It was written by a couple of fanboys. No. We're going to stop talking about that movie. Free Enterprise.
No.
No, it was a movie about a couple of writers in Hollywood. One's a writer, one's an editor, and they're big Trekkie fans. And they just they did all of those references and cutesy things for Star Trek fans in a movie before it was the cool thing to do. So I just felt it was. It's worth watching because it's another one of those times where they reference, Khan. I don't know, what is it? Oh, yeah, somebody made a comment about Ricardo Montalban's chess piece. It's not a chess piece, it really was him. Had this confirmed by Sulu himself.
Sulu would know.
George Takei. No, he did it. He admitted. Somebody asked him if he had ever had a crush on any of his co-stars, and he said it was Ricardo Montalban, and he was just really impressed that he really kept in shape like that. So.
And then Shatner was really upset that it wasn't him.
Anyway, I think we've really drawn this out. Unless you've got anything more to say about Batman.
So much. You really want to open that can of worms?
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
I mean, was there ever a crossover with Batman, or was that just Marvel?
I don't think there has been. I'm going to write a fanfic tonight. Star Trek and Batman.
Yeah, I know. Well, is it going to be Star Trek / Batman? Like
It is going to be / yes.
Batman's just going to fuck all of Star Trek? Is that your...
Except for Uhura.
There we go. I got an F-bomb, everybody.
Just keep in mind, Adam West and William Shatner have both made careers out of making fun of themselves.
How cool would it have been to see Shatner and Adam West as Batman fight in the 60s?
That would have been
the patented Kirk flying kick.
All right. God, I feel so sorry.
All right, I'm wrapping this up. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Batman.
Keep being awesome.
Ow.